Hello and welcome to Eject the Warp Core, a constructive criticism for Star Trek Online, Episode 1. I am Phoenix, and today I will be discussing the time restrictions that are imposed on players, and I'll be giving suggestions on what Cryptic can do to improve the player's experience. To start, let's start with something small. Transwarp. After you transwarp to a place, there is a cooldown time of 15 minutes. While this is not normally an issue, it is when you transwarp to your fleet starbase. At this time, there's no other way to warp to your starbase. And if you accidentally warp out or disconnect, you now have to wait 15 minutes to go back. A fleet starbase should not have a cooldown whatsoever. As for other locations, I think that a 15-minute cooldown is a little much. 5-minute cooldown is more than enough for a cooldown. The other thing is, I should not need a console or an item to reduce the cooldown time. Moving on to powers. Profession powers have a 3 to 15 minute cooldown. Again, this is overkill and gets players frustrated. A 2 to 5 minute cooldown is more than sufficient for any player. If there has to be that much of a cooldown, there should be at least some way to have it reduced so players are not as annoyed or frustrated. A cooldown that I find slightly annoying is the console powers that Zen Store ships come with. Again, cooldowns range from 3 to 5 minutes. I personally think that if you haven't purchased the ship, the max cooldown limit should be 2 to 3 minutes. This limits players from spamming the power, but also having a respectable time limit on it. I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with me on this point, and that is fine. I'm sure most of those people would be PvP players, in which case I could see their point. Another issue I have with timers in Star Trek Online is during PvE events. There are cooldown timers that I don't think are necessary, such as Gear Found Space, where you have 15 minutes to destroy 3 more cubes. If there was a good reason for this timer, you need an all-star team to finish it in time. In this case, there is no need for a timer, and this is a good pug group. However, we still managed to lose out on the bonus option by about 60 seconds. Since the object of this PvE event is to protect the IKS Kang, there is no need for a countdown. If the Kang is still alive by the time the last Borg cube goes boom, that should be enough. If Cryptic wants to make PvE events more challenging and for Gear Space make the enemy a little more tougher, or have slightly more Borg Klingon ships come out, so instead of 2, have 3 or 4 come out. A countdown timer is something that wouldn't be an issue if there was a reason for it, like at the end of the Dyson Sphere event, where a countdown is warranted when the boss ship is going to go boom. Well, I understand that there are times where timers or cooldowns are warranted, but I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just focusing on the cooldowns and timers that are not necessary. Getting back on track with cooldowns in PvE matches. The biggest problem I have is after you complete the event, you have to wait 20 to 60 minutes to run the PvE event again. This is something that should be, and probably is, a big no-no with any MMO. There should be no cooldowns after a PvE event. My reason for this is that the PvE event is like a dungeon. My experiences playing Guild Wars 2 has shown me that you can run a dungeon over and over again, and if you want or need to grind for special tokens or items. If a player or group wants to run the same PvE event over and over again, they should be able to do it without being limited. Having a cooldown on a PvE event only frustrates and annoys gamers. And while some people might argue that it gets those players to play other PvE events, it is the fact that they are forced to play other PvEs. People do not like being forced into things, so why force them into playing a PvE map that they are not going to like? This only angers the players and has them potentially stop playing. This also applies to story missions as well. Now the only difference is you can play the story mission twice before you have a cooldown forced on you. Now I'm backtracking here a little bit. Now in PvP is the only thing that does not have a timer on it. If PvP does not have a cooldown timer, why does everything else? Not everyone PvPs, just like not everyone PvEs. But PvE still has a cooldown, forcing players to wait to play that map again, or forcing them to play a different map. But in the end, the result is the same. You have to wait to play. In conclusion, it seems that cooldowns or timers have been overused to what seems like punishing the players to play a game that we all love. If the developers at Cryptic could make at least some of the changes from my recommendations, I bet they would get a lot more players to return and enjoy the game. Thank you for watching Eject the Warp Core, and we'll see you out there. If you liked this video, please give the old thumbs up. Also, comment on this video whether you agree, disagree, or if I forgot to mention something. And finally, click on the subscribe button for more Eject the Warp Core videos. Thank you.